Hey, welcome back, friends. If you want to join the friends, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. So today we're going to be talking about how you can get absolutely insane durations out of the same aura. Depending on which aura you use, you can get anywhere from 5 to 10 hours straight of the same aura. Seeing as how the cooldown is typically 30 minutes to 1 hour, that is going to be a 10 times increase to the amount of time that you could be using the same aura all continuously. This does kind of put a couple of different methods of resetting auras as well as extending auras all into play. And you do have to do it at a specific timing so that you can get the daily refresh. So basically when the time hits midnight, you can do everything over again. But getting 10 hours of the same aura straight, that's pretty freaking good. With the new VIP membership aura as well as a couple other methods, you can now get up to 10 hours. So first thing that we're going to use obviously is going to be the Hellion aura here. Whenever you need to reset an aura after use, basically if you have a aura on cooldown, I personally have the Greater Runic Accuracy aura on cooldown right now. All you do is you use that aura on the Hellion aura and it gives you the option to recharge your aura. This can be done once per day, so be conservative with it. If you plan on resetting an aura, make sure that you are not just resetting a random aura to use for 5 minutes. Make sure you are resetting the aura that you're planning on using for this entire duration. Another thing that we can do is extend the aura with Vis Wax. So basically all you do is you click on the Vis Wax and click on the aura, and depending on which aura you are trying to extend, obviously this is excluding the festive aura as well as the Hellion aura. I believe that you can't use it on any of the members VIP auras as well. It costs a different amount of Vis Wax. The one we're going to be using primarily is going to be the 100% extend. And depending on which type of aura, it's going to cost anywhere between 10 to 100 Vis Wax. Vis Wax generally runs from 8 to 10,000 GP a piece. So you're looking at anywhere from about 80,000 GP to 1 million GP, depending on which aura you're trying to reset. Vampirism is the one that costs the most, along with two other ones. They do cost 100 Vis Wax to extend 100%. A couple of the in-betweens are going to be Dark Magic and Reckless. And one of the cheapest ones to extend is going to be basically any of the scaling auras. They're only going to cost you 10 Vis Wax a piece. The third method is going to be aura refreshes from death. Now there are 4 different types of aura refreshes, and depending on which tier of aura you're going to be using, you are either going to need a tier 1, 2, 3, or 4. This is directly correlated to the Solomon Store tier list, and unlike the Vis Wax, it does change how much it's going to cost depending on which tier you're using. Tier 1 aura is only going to cost you 5 Reaper points, tier 2 is going to cost you 10, Tier 3 is going to be 15, and Tier 20 is going to be 20 Reaper points. Alternatively, you can use Slayer points if you have excess quantities of them, and this can be used once per day to reset your aura. Now that you know how to obtain all the different resets as well as how to boost your auras, let's talk about how you can get 10 hours straight of the same aura. One thing I do want to mention is that you must be using a combat aura, because otherwise you can't use the death stopwatches to reset your aura, and you also have to do this at a particular time. At some point during the 3rd activation, so anywhere from 4 to 6 hours from your first activation, it's going to have to hit reset. That way you can reuse the Hellion aura and reuse the death stopwatch a second time in the 10 hours. So what you're going to want to do is about 2 to 4 hours before reset, anytime in that 2-hour range, you start up any of the combat auras using Vis Wax to extend it. Then after the 2 hours is done, you use the Hellion aura and again extend the aura for a second time. After that, you use Death Stopwatch. Depending on the tier of aura that you have, it's going to be the tier of Death Stopwatch that you actually use. and then you reset it again, so that means you have a third time of 2 hours. Again, at some point during that, you are going to have to hit reset. That way you can reuse the Hellion Aura and the Death Aura. So you kind of have to time it out a little bit. It's kind of a little bit of an exploit, kind of a little bit of just good timing to do this. We'll have a couple alternatives if you aren't going to be doing it during reset. You won't get 10 hours straight, but I'll have the best possible amount that you can get. Then after that, you just redo the first 2 auras again, where you reset it with the Hellion Aura and reset it with the Death Aura. Again, using Vis Wax the entire time. But if you add that all up, it's going to be 5 activations of the same aura for 2 hours apiece, which means you can get 10 hours of the same aura straight. It is absolutely insane. Now let's go ahead and check out how much that's going to cost us, though. Let's start out the cost for Vis Wax. Depending on the type of aura you're going to be using, it's going to cost a different amount of Vis Wax. The tier of the aura does not matter for Vis Wax costs. Basically, all this is going to be doing is extending by 100%. In general, the 10 Vis Waxes are going to be all of the different non-combat auras. These are not the auras that you can actually use the death stopwatch on anyhow, with the exception of Aegis. But because it's only cost 10 Vis Wax, I am taking an approximate cost of Vis Wax to 10,000 apiece, so it's only going to cost you 100,000 GP to actually extend these auras so that it gets double the amount of time. In the 40 aura, or 40 Vis Wax auras, that's the majority of the combat equipment with a couple of exceptions. First off, Sure-Footed is in this section, so if you are using Sure-Footed, again, non-combat aura, but all the rest of these are combat auras. They're going to cost you 400,000 GP to actually extend them for an extra hour. And last but not least, we have the 100 Vis extends. This is going to be the extra adrenaline aura, as well as penance and vampirism. All 3 of these are going to be extremely expensive to extend for an extra hour at 1 million GP apiece. The Death Aura refreshes, on the other hand, actually cost a different amount depending on which tier of aura you're going to be using. That means that it's going to start costing a lot if you're using the higher tier auras, whereas the extending doesn't actually change in cost at all, depending on what tier you're actually using. So starting out with the tier 1, it's going to cost you 50 Slayer points or 5 Reaper points. Tier 2 is going to be 100 Slayer points or 10 Reaper points. Tier 3 is going to be 150 Slayer points or 15 Reaper points, and Tier 4 is going to be 200 Slayer points or 20 Reaper points. As you can see, the exchange rate is basically 10 to 1 for Reaper point to Slayer point. It is up to you which one you actually want to use. I did add a GP cost to it. I basically used the Reaper points as the basis for the GP cost and how much money you would be making on Hydrixes instead. That being said, this doesn't actually have an exact GP cost, but it's just the opportunity cost of using one of these instead of getting a Hydrix. Tier 1 is going to be about 300,000, Tier 2 is 600,000, Tier 3 is 900,000, and Tier 4 is 1.2 million GP. Unfortunately, with all the factors of how much Vis Wax is going to cost depending on which aura you use, as well as the death stopwatch costing a different amount per which tier you have, it's almost impossible for me to actually tell you exactly how much it's going to cost you for the 10 hours. I do want to mention though that Vis Wax, depending on which type of combat aura you're using, it's either 40 or 100 Vis. So that's going to be about 400,000 to 1 million GP. The death stopwatch is going to be any of the tiers. If you're using tier 1, it's only going to cost you 300,000, and if you're using tier 4, it's obviously going to cost you 1.2 million. So you can do the math for yourself with any particular aura that you actually want, but it is going to cost you quite a bit, especially if you're using something like Vampirism. That's a tier 2 aura, and it's going to cost you 1 million GP every single time you actually use the Vis Wax. So it's going to cost you about 5.2 million to have 10 hours of the same aura, for Vampirism specifically. Lastly, I want to wrap it up with a couple of good alternatives if you don't want to spend quite as much money on everything. The first one I'm going to talk about is the 2-hour one. Basically, the Hellion Aura is a free reset, so you can get 2 hours of any aura that you'd like, or 2 times as much aura for any aura that you like, for free cost, basically. The next one is going to be the 4-hour. Vis Wax is going to be the cheapest way of extending any aura for an hour, bar the Hellion aura. So you're going to want to use Vis Wax whenever you can. A couple exceptions to that are going to be the Vampirism and Penance aura. It's actually cheaper to use the Death stopwatch instead of extending them with Vis Wax. Depending on how much you actually want the aura for, you're going to want to take that into consideration. You can only use the Death reset one time, but it is going to be actually cheaper to use Death reset for one of these times than it is for Vis Wax. In general though, if you want 4 hours, you're going to use Vis Wax on both times resets of the aura, and you're also going to use the Hellion aura. And last but not least, the 6 hours. This is going to be the best amount that you can get if you do not care about when you're doing it and you don't try to line it up perfectly with reset. You're just going to extend all 3 of the times you use the aura and reset it with Hellion as well as Death stopwatch. If you guys all enjoy this, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below so you can see all my future content. I would love it if you leave a like and a comment as well, seeing if this was useful to anybody. As always though, have a good one.